Welcome. My guest today is Dr. Sam Hurtus, an academic famous for arguing humans do not have free will.
It's my pleasure to be here, Dave.
That's David. Dr. Harris, why did you choose to come here today?
Western civilization is built on the myth that we have free will. This leads to all sorts of evils, such as jailing people for actions which they had no choice but to commit.
But aren't the judges who send criminals to jail acting without free will too?
I object to the use of the word criminal. That further reinforces the false notion that people choose their actions.
But if your theory is correct, I had no choice but to use the word criminal. Just as judges have no choice but to lock criminals up.
If those judges understood that they did not have the choice to act as they did, then they could act differently. It's not just judges, but for example religious people too. If they knew their belief in religion was not the result of free choice, then they would not be so religious and the world would then be a better, more humane place.
Can you explain to us how if people have no choice but to act religiously, or indeed they have no choice but to act in just the way they act, that knowing they had no choice they could then change their behavior?
It's easy. Telling ourselves that we have free will is one of these little stories we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better about a cold, uncaring world. It makes us feel that our place in the universe is not as insignificant as it really is.
And so your plan to educate people that the universe is a vast, indifferent, uncaring, pitiless, godless place will make them better people. That somehow bringing ordinary folks to discover their lives literally have no meaning will make them realize they have no free will, and thus that they will behave in a way which is what exactly?
I have discovered that although we have no free will and that life is meaningless, it can be lived in a better way. People just need to adopt my way of thinking. I realize it will be a hard sell.
But wouldn't it be an impossible sell? If people have no choice but to believe and act as they do, how can telling them anything make them behave differently?
You're a prime example of what I mean when I said it will be an uphill job showing people that thousands of years of myths have skewed their way of thinking.
Myths that they had no choice but to believe?
People just like to believe in myths. They are very comforting. Perhaps too comforting. What's needed is more discomfort. Then we would see people begin to wake up and finally understand they do not have free will.
Let me change tack. Why is it you say humans do not have free will?
It's scientific.
Please do explain. Our audience is very educated.
We are nothing but our biology, walking meat machines. Our brains, which control all our thoughts and actions, are built out of billions and billions of cells, each of which operates in a deterministic manner. One end of a brain cell, which are called neurons, accepts inputs. These inputs are processed inside the cell, which then deterministically causes an output at the other end of the cell. This in turn causes other neurons to fire, one after the other. Each neuron operates according to chemical and physical laws. There is no point at which a human will intercedes and changes the course of a cell's operation. Because of this we deduce there is no free will.
Hang on a minute. Most of what you say about the actions of neurons makes sense. But one of your premises is that there is no point at which human will intercedes or causes changes in brain cells. How do you know that premise is true?
That premise is obviously one of the myths which causes belief in free will.
But aren't you just assuming it? What proof do you have for its validity?
Because we don't have free will, that premise cannot possibly be true. If we accept the myth that the human will intercedes in the brain's functioning, we open ourselves up to the mind-body problem. This is when we believe the mind is different than the body, when actually we are nothing more than our bodies.
It makes sense to argue that there is no Descartesian ghost in the machine, that we are our bodies. But it doesn't follow that because we are made of cells, neurons, blood vessels and the like, that there is no human will. It appears you have just assumed what you set out to prove, that there is no human will because there is no human will. What about intentionality?
It only appears we have intentionality. This is our brains telling us that we have control over our objects of thought, when in reality, we have no choice, because the workings of the brain are entirely deterministic, with possibly a little quantum mechanics thrown in.
Quantum mechanics?
Quantum mechanics operates at the subcellular level. We don't completely understand everything, but we don't have to. Because we know that nobody can predict the outcome of quantum mechanical interactions. And since there is no way to predict the outcome, there is no will that can direct that outcome. If there were, then this will would be able to predict what was going to happen.
So for instance, if I predict that I will blow a kiss to the audience, like this, then because I predicted this action, I have free will?
It doesn't work that way. Your body, your brain actually, made you do that. It also made you make that prediction.
But even accepting the unpredictability of quantum mechanical events, isn't it a circular argument to suppose that because we can make accurate predictions of our actions, that the only way we can do so is because we do not have free will? Isn't it also possible that we make accurate predictions because we have free will?
No. Computer experiments show this isn't the case. We hooked people up to machines that measure brain activity. We then asked to make choices, which are really nothing more than predictions of what you will do. We noted the exact time the choices were made, and we compared these times with when the people said they felt like they made the choices. The computer proved that the brain acted well before people thought they made a choice. Hence, there's no free will.
Isn't the brain ceaselessly operating? How do these machines know the precise time the actual choices were made?
Because areas of the brain associated with making choices were more active when the people made the choices. These areas were more active before the areas associated with people saying they made choices were more active.
We're in danger of getting lost here. But how do you know the areas of the brain you say are associated with making choices really are associated with making choices, and are not subject to will?
Because we have noticed in many experiments that it is these areas which are more active when people make choices.
But that doesn't prove human will is not influential in these areas. It assumes it. And then you could be wrong about the areas of the brain. Aren't these machines used to measure brain activity especially crude? And isn't our knowledge of the workings of the brain in its infancy? The areas you say are associated with making a choice could have been pre-activated by the wills of the participants, knowing they were going to be measured. They chose by their own free will to come to the experiments in the first place. Isn't that right?
Now who's making assumptions about free will?
Well, I see that we're just about out of time. Before we sign off, I understand that you have formed a new group of fellow believers in the lack of free will.
Yes. We were going to have our first meeting in San Antonio this March. Some of us wanted to have it in Minneapolis, but the majority voted for Texas.
But then they really had no choice, did they? That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us. And be sure to tune in next week when we'll be joined by Dr. Rick Dawkins, who claims there is no objective morality. Good night, everybody.